Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to have cultural provocateur Ewan Morrison with me in Glasgow, who's just about to publish his ninth novel, which I have here. I'm lucky to have received a copy for Emma, which will be out on the 25th of March. And I'd like to begin with two quotes at the very beginning of the book here. One from Dostoevsky. The death of a child is the greatest reason of all to doubt the existence of God. And here's another one from a former Google executive. I don't know how to pronounce his name. More God,
Godot. Yeah.
Godard. With artificial intelligence, we are creating God. And
Something that we
the
hear
book,
increasingly.
yeah,
Yeah.
the book also concerns or is for a deceased child who lost her life to a transhumanist experiment. So fill us in. Maybe what made you write the book,
Hmm.
and tell us maybe just a little bit about the beginning of the book as well,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
we'll take a conversation in a different direction, I guess.
Well, thanks for having
Thanks.
me, Johannes. I've been
Thanks.
watching you, listening to you talk about your philosophical interests. Heidegger and Nietzsche were particularly valuable to me. Um, the book, I guess, books come from where do they germinate? They come from a number of questions
Yep.
to start with. So, on the one hand, I had an idea of a child who was brought up by parents who are nihilists or nihilists, and they have no values whatsoever, and they don't know how to raise their child. So the child always asks why this, why that, why do you get up, why do you go to work, why do we have to eat, why do I have to go to sleep? And the father notices as his marriage is falling apart that he hasn't got substantial answers for anything. Why not hit another kid at school? You can answer that with the Christian answer, turn the other cheek. You can have the Darwinian answer, which would be, it's the survival of the fittest. The parent with no values just says, well, maybe we'll just report it to the school because that's bullying. So we'll get the social work department involved in it. So this child grows up asking why of her parents, and as she reaches adulthood, she realizes that not just her parents don't have the answer, but society doesn't either. And she gets drawn towards science and gradually
Yeah.
towards artificial intelligence and towards neuroscience, cognitive science, and AI, and the dream that there will be a super intelligence created that will answer the big why for her.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the process of being connected to an AI machine through trodes that are inserted into a brain chip within her body is actually what kills her. And the story really starts with her father, who's lost after a year after her death. He's been hearing his daughter's voice in his head, taunting him, singing the sort of questions of why this, why that, why are you alive, why are you drinking, why have you given up your job? And he realizes he's close to suicide, and that there's one thing he can possibly do, which would be to attack the CEO and the corporation that were responsible for killing her in the first place, because the experiment, the biotech experiment in implanting a brain chip, has been hushed up. We find out as the book goes on that it's been a multi-pronged cover-up involving government departments as well as big tech and biotech. And we learn a bit more about how big tech and biotech have evolved through these human experiments throughout the book. So the story is really 30 days in the life of a lost man as he plans to murder the CEO who was responsible for the brain chip experiment that killed his daughter. And I started really from a kind of Dostoevskian premise. It's a bit like Crime and Punishment in terms of its
Yeah.
structure. There's a crime that's going to be committed, and at the root of the crime is the question of whether murder is acceptable as revenge, and the murder of how many people. Is he going to kill one person? Is he going to kill a room full of people? The father intends to blow himself up and take the CEO, the tech CEO, with him when he goes. So throughout the 30 days, as his bomb building increases and he does his tests, and he hears his daughter's voice louder and louder, also helping him, the scale of what he's doing starts to
Yeah.
increase, and the moral implications of becoming a murderer become like a drag weight against the ticking clock towards the date. So, in a sense, it's a moral story about the question of why, the unanswered questions of the daughter, why we're
Well,
why we are alive, and what do we believe
yeah.
in, and how can we use that to guide how we should act, and what are the limits to our acts. Can we murder? Should we, out of revenge? And should we go looking for the answers to existence by inventing super intelligent machines that we hope will answer the question for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, just to maybe go straight in that direction, that this is the main motivation behind much of the transhumanist project, also the AI project? I know they're different, but they do have overlaps quite significant. Is to find an answer to the question why. Is there something rather than nothing, to use this old
Yeah.
metaphysical question? um,
Well, I think,
uh,
yeah,
After the death of God, no less, that
exactly. I mean,
the
I think,
foundation has been broken,
well, I
has
mean,
broken away.
the death of God and the emergence of science both come hand in hand. So, in a sense, science has got blood on its hands, but the God-shaped hole has persisted and grown throughout the 20th century into the 21st, and after the collapse of so many utopias in the 20th century, the only utopia left, the only big dream of all the answers and the solution to all of our problems has come from Silicon Valley with its tech utopianism. So it posits a series of answers. Yes, we can discover immortality, and we can deliver it to human people. The transhumanists say, yes, we can answer the purpose of existence and save the species. We can colonize other planets, and we can upload our minds. We can freeze our bodies and upload our minds, into the machines. And it's it's everything's pushed into the future, where at some point there will be a quasi-religious moment where all will be revealed within the logic of the transhumanists. I mean, Ray Kurzweil, people like that, talk
Hmm.
about that as the singularity. But I think it's an old religious issue, and transhumanism is packed full of religious symbolism, with its apocalypse, utopia, its
Yeah.
disembodiment, its transcendence of the human body into the machine body, the freedom of the soul, if you like, through becoming uploaded into machines.
Hmm.
It's an extraordinary sci-fi cult secular religion, really, transhumanism, and I think it fills a huge gap, as you say, in our need for a huge belief system that's forward looking and that promises us the huge answers.
But what I just wonder what the answer would be, because all the logic of it is just enhancement.
Yeah.
And if we look back, just for example, what Aristotle has to say about poesis. Poesis is what we would translate not as poetry, by the way, but as production.
Mm.
And production is, as Aristotle points out 2,500 years ago, is excessive. Anything that, if you make a pair of shoes, you have to make another pair of shoes the next day. Another pair. You build a house, you have to build another house, another house, another house, another
Mm-hmm.
house. So those cannot be acts that are done for themselves. They cannot
Yeah.
actually be fulfilling. There is infinite striving. So infinite striving is not anything new. There's not something the Faustian man has come up with or
Mm-hmm.
anything. It's as old as human desire.
Mm.
So and also not just desire, just genuine human need. You have a pair of shoes. You walk 5,000 miles with them. You need a new pair of shoes, etc. So you can hear I never walk because I have no idea how long. how long you can have a pair of shoes? 5,000 miles. That sounds way too much. But, anyways, so this is quite this. So what I always hear, there's a gentleman, his name eludes me, who wants to live forever,
Hmm.
by the methods that he uses, which is to take 100 pills a day,
Yes.
and have Botox injected into his penis, etc.
Hmm.
I fear that he will probably suffer cancer, because
Hmm.
cancer, a tumor, is something that happens when you when you don't let the cells die.
When
That
yes,
when they
indeed.
so when you don't die, you get cancer.
Mm.
That's an oversimplification. So this logic of enhancement,
Hmm.
I just into what? So you mentioned Ray Kurzweil,
Mm.
the quasi, and you've talked about this as well, much on your Twitter account and Substack, etc. On the sort of Gnosticism of the
Yeah.
transhumanist or the transhumanist project. Uh, so I just wonder what. Um, yeah,
Well,
I'll
I think
give you that for that.
yeah, I think you have two things going on with transhumanism. One, you've got the sort of Elon Musk kicking the can down the road, where the can is a skyscraper-sized piece of metal that's getting thrown up down the road towards the moon and Mars, and this notion of infinitely colonizing the universe because our planet is going to blow up in 2 billion years from now when the sun expands. This is all, within his logic. I'm talking here. This is his narrative: is that he's going to save the species. People that are against this are his fanboys call extinctionists. I would probably be an extinctionist. Martin Heidegger would be an extinctionist, because we believe we should stay here and try to work out what life's all about here, rather than kicking the can down the road, not coming up with any understanding of existence at all, but simply
Yeah,
trying to colonize other places, very
yeah,
much
yeah.
like a sort of 17th century colonist in a boat, um, sailing off beyond into the planets, whatever. So I think that that's this kind of, it's like a form of infinite regress or infinite postponement. It's not tackling the existential questions, but
Yeah.
transhumanism offers that. On the other hand, you have Kurzweil's singularity, and you find it emerging with people like David Pearce. I don't know if you've come across Pearce, the
You've
philosopher. He's
mentioned
one
him.
of the
Yeah.
co-founders of H plus. It's called Humanity Plus. Used to be called the Transhuman
Yeah, but you see,
Association.
that's the logic, right? It's plus.
Yeah, exactly.
But plus
Augmented,
what? Plus zero or plus?
enhanced. He has this most perverse philosophy. It's based on utilitarianism and hedonism.
That's not philosophy, but yeah.
so so his idea is, it's called the Abolition Project. So he and like-minded people. He's just a university professor, so he's never going to actually do this. I've had some arguments with
Okay,
him
good. Yeah.
on Twitter. He
He,
hasn't
he
got
might
the
also know
system
it's
in place, but
he might also know it's bullshit, like most academics do what they're doing. It's nonsense.
I think if he tried to do what he's wanting to do, he would find it was bullshit. But his plan is to re-engineer every species on Earth so that it can no longer feel pain or cause suffering.
Okay, perfect.
So, of course, there are very
Well,
practical.
so no more sex, because um, you feel a lot of pain in
Well,
sex.
no more senses. No more knowing a candle is
Yeah.
hot.
Oh yeah. Why? Why?
Lots of people walking around with burns.
That's
But I mean, what amazed me more than anything else was this idea of, like, if he got some huge grant, I don't know, from USAID or whatever, to actually go ahead and do this, he'd have to recombine the DNA of 1.7 million species that couldn't eat on any other species. This is a great transhumanist dream, of course, to get
but
rid of
also
suffering.
that also by the but if we take evolution seriously,
Mm,
continue to evolve. So the genome itself is in
yes.
continuous evolvement and also has to adapt, as by the law of Darwin, with the new environment. It doesn't stay static. You see, it's a kind of silly Platonist metaphysics
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that just looks at these
mm-hmm.
at DNA, for example, as perfectly timeless.
Well, I think that's what you get when you have pure utilitarianism. You end up with stasis, which is
Yeah.
which is what we discovered with the Soviet Union, what H.G. Wells discovered after trying to come up with utopias. Um, year after year, decade after decade, trying to write them out, work how they went. He worked out that every utilitarian society based on a plan ends up with stasis and stagnation. And so I think you have the same thing with Mr. Pierce's re-engineering of all the species in the world so they don't experience pain. And it also summed up an extraordinary example of statism as well. Imagine 1.7 million
They're all just going to line
creatures
up.
all trained to go on a line to get
Yeah.
their protein surrogacy pills every day. And it's going to have to be a super controller to get that to work.
Yeah. Well, they all just wait for a year or so, just do nothing, just sit at home. The
And
tiniest ant.
they have to have boredom erased as well as a form of suffering. So on the
Well,
one
yeah.
hand, transhumanism is sheer nonsense, but at the same time, it exerts a powerful influence on, I think, young minds who want something, scientifically, science fictionally fascinating, compelling, and hopeful. I don't know if you've ever been attacked by transhumanist or effective accelerationist trolls online. They really do feel like a cult in a sense because you are standing in the way of them, of their gurus ever achieving their dreams,
Hmm.
which is to live forever, which is an end of suffering, which is the colonization of the planets. Uh, and young people get sucked into these ideas with a great passion. I think precisely because of the whole HOLE that we live with just now, the whole which was once filled with religion, with substantial belief structures, even with communism as well.
Yeah.
The whole that's been left over when we don't really know what we believe in anymore, and we have to make it up every day.
Yeah, I don't know where he says it, but Kierkegaard says somewhere the issue is that if you decide today that this is the meaning of my life, if you make that decision for yourself, then the next day you could decide the other way. Uh, so that's the predicament, perhaps, of the modern, late modern, postmodern subject, whatever you want to refer
I
to
think
our time.
I think you get the same thing in Dostoevsky as well,
Yeah.
where he says that if I set a plan for what I'm going to do with my life, I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to mess it up just because I can. This, we're not good. We're not good at sticking to plans because they become oppressive the more we feel reined in by them.
There's, I don't know, you're probably aware of John Gray.
Yes.
He was one of the first who, as far as I know, in this country
Mm.
drew awareness to the transhumanist project
Hmm.
overall,
Hmm. Hmm.
as also, he's a proper cynic. I mean, he doesn't
Hmm.
require any meaning apparently in his life. At least no transcendent meaning. I think we should make
Mm.
that distinction.
Hmm.
Overall, transcendent meaning
Hmm.
is is not necessary, I think, to live a meaningful life. You could,
Hmm.
because when you make a decision that counts in your life, that's when
Yeah.
you experience
Hmm.
meaning and freedom.
Mm.
Uh, when you make an actual decision, you are, Heidegger would put it, you're resolute. You're making a
Hmm.
resolution. You show your resoluteness. And like
I think,
John, yeah,
yeah. No, no. I mean, just one little note there that I
yeah,
think quite a lot of philosophers and neuroscientists and psychologists are talking about meaning, um, the intrinsic and the extrinsic, and what it's like to be in the flow state. I hear John Vervaeke talking about this quite a bit. Also, Ian McGilchrist, the flow state being that which everything feels meaningful because you're striving and doing. It's a back and forth reciprocal state that you're in. Everything feels urgent and important. So that's a different way of looking at meaning rather than transcendent meaning. That the meanings is a process of discovery
yeah.
and of challenging oneself constantly. And I think that's the stronger sense of meaning that we probably have today. And also, we feel the lack of being within the flow state. We are bored. We find things are too easy. We don't know what to strive for, so we don't enter into the flow state. Which is why I think you have this very odd thing online where people recommend that if you're feeling blue, depressed, and directionless, you should join the gym and do weights, which I find to be completely banal. But it's certainly an example of what a flow state would be, because you're
there would
attempting
at
to do
least be
something.
some resistance
Yeah, exactly.
to
You've,
because that's one of the issues of the digital world is that there's no resistance. Anything you don't really touch it, or you touch your smartphone, but you click on something, you don't really click it anymore. There's no resistance to any of these non-objects. And
well, I
if
mean,
there's a
there's
tiny bit of resistance, then you feel frustrated immediately. Where's my Uber Eats delivery? Sorry, go on.
well, this is one of the big things that. So I'm part of a community of people on Twitter who are artists, and I find an extraordinary pushback against AI and generative art has come from a wide range of people in the arts. A lot of them are graphic artists, some are musicians, some are fine artists. But this sense that generative AI, you type in a prompt and you'll
Yeah,
get 4 images in 20 seconds, and then you'll get four more, and you change your prompt, and on you go. You generate 120 messages, and then you just choose which one you want. I've done it myself. Everyone has probably given it a go,
yeah,
but it's so against the idea of a kind of striving with the materials in art, of struggling with the fusion of image and stuff that you're dealing with, whether that's the stuff of the paint of the or the sculpture, or how the thing's going to manifest in form.
yeah,
Just this idea of just passively choosing and selecting cultural output. And what's been surprising is seeing some of these, I don't know what we would call them. I tend to call them AI pushers, people who are pushing it as an idea that everyone should accept. They have some urgency when they do this. They come out with these strange expressions like, all artists are sick and tired of how hard it is to make art. What they need is to embrace AI. And they get
yeah.
these
But
reactions, yeah, from people that I know. They go, no, 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 you missed the whole point. How hard it is the joy and the beauty of what the process of discovery is when you're
but
making art.
also but also to be able to see, to
Mm,
bring out. Uh, there's Michelangelo. At least it's attributed to Michelangelo
mm,
to have said, I saw the angel in the marble and I had to
mm-hmm,
free it."
mm,
To be able to see in what.
mm-hmm,
I don't know if you have ever been to Naples. There's
mm.
a Jesus, the veiled
The
Jesus
veiled
in San
Jesus, yeah,
Severo.
it's extraordinary. Yeah.
It's stone, but you
Mm,
don't
mm,
see it, and nothing, and there's nothing that could ever just seeing. You have to see it.
mm-hmm.
No picture of it could ever show you that it's. I can't even describe it. It
It's a
looks
phenomenally
like it's a
emotional
dead
piece.
body.
Is
You
mm,
know it's stone,
yeah,
but you think it's Jesus Christ
mm-hmm.
under a
A kind of silk drape. It
yeah,
seems.
silk. It looks like silk.
It looks
That's
like
what's
silk. It's
even.
so
Yeah,
it's so fine,
yeah,
and it's all
and
manifest there.
yeah,
The empathy, the passion, the labor that the artist went through, and there's a sort of visionary quality to it as well. Also the ecstasy of the artist making that piece,
yeah,
realizing it from the form. No, it's extraordinary. I think we have to remind ourselves of these deep expressions of what art can do.
yeah, and also of seeing. The seeing. We it's not just a sense, taking in sense data.
Mm,
We have to actually see. We have to. There's some work that has to go into it. Maybe Rilke's poem, the of the torso of Apollo,
mhm,
could remind us of this. It's the one that he ends saying, "You must change your life."
mhm, mhm,
And I think that poem reminds us that it's not even enough to see uh, an image of certain objects. You have to see the real thing.
mm.
And
Will it be in this space with that sculpture to walk
yeah,
around the veiled Christ in a sense of disbelief and awe,
yeah,
and then to be hit by
of
the
life itself, of
yeah.
existence itself. The strange, and especially in a place like
Mm,
Naples,
mm,
extremely violent. They
yes.
call it a paradise for devils.
Hmm.
Benedetto Croce called it a paradise inhabited by devils. They call themselves Figli del Vesuvio. They know that they could die any second when this
The
volcano
children of
goes.
Vesuvius. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
they could die. Pompeii was already taken out, and it's about time I think this thing erupts again. So it's they sometimes I don't know who said it, but I heard it once in Italy. It's the only hope for humanity is Napoli.
I've had some. Well, it's the only place I've ever arrived in where someone ran up to me straight away and said, Mister, my sister is dying. You must give blood immediately." And and then of course, so I did. I went and gave blood to this little caravan that was sitting there. I think it was called Avis or something. Turned out to be a like multinational trader in blood substances. And I was in there facing an Australian who was also having, a liter of a liter of blood taken out of his veins, and he turned to me and said, really sad story about that guy's brother, isn't it?" I said, "Wasn't it his sister?"
Okay, yeah,
So
it's
there you go. My blood was traded, sold and traded within minutes of
yeah.
arriving in Naples.
If you don't know it, for those who don't know it, people should watch Gomorrah,
Yes.
the series. The Sopranos are little children compared to it's
Hmm.
kindergarten time compared to Gomorrah. Um, but the
The Veiled
I think
Christ. Yeah.
yeah
Mm,
in a place like this especially where so we could think why even ask the why question.
hmm,
It this might sound strange, but the question why is there something rather than nothing,
mm,
which is Leibniz's question,
mm,
demands of beings that
mm,
exist a justification for their existence.
hmm.
That kind of a question is would be alien to a Greek. Aristotle doesn't ask why. Uh,
Alien,
they
alien
ask
to a
what
group.
is,
Yeah,
but not why. What
and
is, what are beings, but they never ask why is there something.
yet, so you've got in the final work of Friedrich Nietzsche, or the one that was put together from his notebooks, the very first sentence. So why, I think, is a very 19th century problem that we've inherited. So he says, nihilism, there is no goal, no answer to the question why.
Yeah,
I think we've been stuck with this. Maybe we're asking the wrong kind of why. Maybe we're looking for a transcendent
yeah.
why. And we've got stuck in a state of disillusionment, as Nietzsche would have said, because we harbored an illusion in the first place, an illusion that there could be a big answer. So no, but I think this ties back to the whole question of technology
Yeah,
proffering itself as an answer to everything.
yeah, yeah.
It seems that
But
there's a
what do you do with
huge.
the? But what do you do with the answer? I mean, I, if you know why this exists, it would be a cosmic joke in the end. What's this divine comedy about?
Well, I think it goes
What?
back to the Abrahamic roots that these secular faiths come from. So I think the answer to the why is that you have been a good person and you will live forever without suffering, and consciousness will extend throughout the universe for all eternity. And so it seems to me that the answer of transhumanism is very close to the Abrahamic notion of you know of heaven.
Yeah,
The why? Because there is another place that we belong, which is
but
not
but that
here.
but that
That's
comes
the
with a
answer.
in terms of our cultural baggage,
Mm,
our inheritance
hmm.
as Europeans, that comes with so many contradictions. If you read a bit of Dante, uh, his attempt to justify why Aristotle is in hell, for
Yes.
example,
Hmm.
um, and so which all I think to me is an maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he's almost arguing against Christianity. I think in that moment.
Mm,
Why would you have anyone who was just by chance happenstance born before the advent
right.
of the
Yeah.
Christ?
Yeah.
having to wither away forever, not maybe in hell, but in limbo.
It's such a fantastic structure, though. I mean, those wonderful drawings of the is it? Let me. Is it 9 or 13 floors in hell? I can never remember.
9, isn't it?
It's nine, I think. And
Nine,
again,
seven,
this
six,
raises
five.
the question of the bureaucracies and the technocrats that would run such a system as as 9 floors of hell, and what are the criteria exactly that place debtors and fraudsters on a floor above adulterers. Why is there so much why is there an entire floor of souls who were in love with each other outside wedlock? It just seems unfair. um, and why does hell freeze at the bottom? So I think there's just an incredible fascination with Dante's Inferno. I don't think it necessarily holds much scrutiny. It's just a beautiful structure, which is bonkers, and which is full of these contradictions, which are rather amusing to us now. I think because we don't hold those same values at all.
No, but two things.
Mm,
Maybe briefly on Nietzsche. You mentioned this fragment on European nihilism.
mm,
The answer to the question why is missing. There's a fragment. Now, Nietzsche. I have Nietzsche right here. This is Nietzsche. This is the collected works in German. About more than half of this is the Nachlass,
uh-huh.
and this is not is has not yet been translated all of it into English.
Mm,
There
mm,
is from I think 1888 or 1889. So he's almost he's he's about to collapse. Let's say
yeah.
when he writes this, which is again coming back to the Übermenschen to the question why and that the answer is missing. And he says something, it may have been from something he read around the time that was already in the air anyways. He says that there's something is coming that is inevitable, and that is the quote, Wirtschaftsgesamtverwaltung der Erde, the total economic management of the earth.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm,
inevitably in
mm-hmm,
store, which means that the human being will be reduced to a cog in a wheel, work, an uncanny, he calls it ein ungeheuerliches Räderwerk,
yeah.
also an eerie, horrendous, horrifying, uncanny wheelwork. And he says it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm,
So this is basically his response to the question: what is the history of the next 200 years? Is nihilism? Is this? And the only thing that could justify this, and this is where basically for me the entire Nietzschean project breaks down,
mm,
is the Übermensch as a sort of criminal
mm-hmm,
on top of this wheelwork who
mm-hmm,
justifies the existence of this wheelwork, or else
mm-hmm.
it would be completely senseless. But the Übermensch is at the same time dependent on this wheelwork
Mm-hmm.
and is not providing in any way a move beyond. So what he had hoped for in the Zarathustra
Yeah.
is that it would be the human being is a bridge, but then the
Mm, mm,
Übermensch
mm,
also
mm,
is the next step, etc. That's out the window.
mm,
This is
mm,
inevitably coming,
mm-hmm.
and the only answer to justify the only way to justify this is the Übermensch. But he will stand on top of this wheelwork, basically requiring that wheelwork to exist and to continue to perpetuate
It
itself.
seems horribly prophetic given where we are just
Yeah,
now. I mean, if you're to look at the European technocratic state as the total management state, I mean that's what it wants to do. It wants to use technology to create a state of total management, another version of the planned economy, if you like. And who stands in its way but the self-appointed Nietzschean reading Elon Musk, who is the Dionysian Übermensch, who comes in with the chaotic theory of accelerationism with no regulation, the libertarian against the planners. So I think that tension I think that tension plays out. I think people do have to choose which side they're on as well, and it's a pretty horrible choice. The
neither.
rock and the hard place.
There's always
Neither.
more than two.
There's always run away to the forest and read instead.
Well, no, no,
Hmm.
no, no, no. No, I think that's
That's what I've
well
been
that's
doing for many years.
yeah. No, but that's uh I think too. So the other point I wanted to make, which ties in with that perhaps, is why not? So we've wiped away the horizon,
Yeah.
which, by the way, Nietzsche is very clear that this is
Mm,
he doesn't believe in God. And
mm,
he thinks that this is an old story that's bonkers anyway. So it's
mm,
not actually that bad. And the
mm,
madman has come too early.
mm,
And so, but what we haven't perhaps even attempted yet is to uh, look back on our history and also just consider it's not so it's not a humanism that I'm trying to advocate
mm,
for just now, but to understand the resonance spaces in which we are as human beings, what it means to exist in the first place.
mm.
Um, Not the human being at the center, but we're so happy or content, it seems, to just leap ahead into a future that never arrives. I think that's also part of it, which is, by the way, also strikingly close, I think, just structurally to Christianity, the promise of the Messiah coming again, or of the Judgment Day, etc. The
Yeah.
sun burning or imploding to me is the same as hellfire
Mm,
on earth
mm. Oh, indeed.
on the last
It's
day. Uh,
it's hugely inspired or even lifted from it. Um, so you're
but the
saying,
intensity of life, the intensity of existence
mm,
that we can feel that we're mortal beings, for example,
yeah.
that we all have to die. We didn't choose to be born. Uh, this we're not even close to that yet because we're psychologizing it away or therapeuting,
Well, I think we've got
therapized.
ourselves
What's the word?
into.
Yeah.
Mm, I think we've got
Go ahead.
ourselves into Nietzsche's hole, the huge chasm created by Nietzsche, and I think it's a surprising thing to discover that a vast number of kids, boys mostly, I think, um,
Yeah.
are reading or studying or hearing quotations by Nietzsche, and are talking about what they now called optimistic nihilism, which is an extraordinary new development. It's like mass nihilism. It's nihilism that you can use in a daily way to get out of taking responsibility for anything. So it's
Oh, that's
an adaptive form of nihilism. You know, yeah, yeah. No, it's very popular with the young.
eh,
I think very damaging. So I mean, maybe you find professors do this as well, but you can go. Well, I don't need to pass this exam because the human species is going to die out. So use cosmological nihilism to get rid of any problems that you have with achieving anything. I don't need a girlfriend because there's no such thing as morality or ethics or the need for relationships. Everything's groundless and meaningless, including cohabiting with someone else. There's no such thing as love. It's just a social construct. So the young tie themselves in knots over the fact that everything is meaningless, but they use it as a way to not make a first step into the world and to commit to anything. I think it's an endemic thing. I think it's the curse of Nietzsche. I think I don't know if everyone's reading Nietzsche and deciding this, or if it's simply something that Nietzsche diagnosed, that
mm.
without a larger belief structure, people will fall into these gaps where things seem meaningless and they're demotivated.
well that could well it because it needs justification. I mean, this eerie wheelwork of which Nietzsche speaks, and when it doesn't have that, you actually literally have criminals who become
Mm,
the idols of the young, especially of young men. I'm not going to
mm,
mention any
mm,
names, but Andrew Tate comes to mind, for example.
mhm.
That's one instance I would think where um,
Nietzsche's
uh,
fool, Mr. Tate.
yeah. But I wonder though, something else I've been thinking about is how the normie is worse than the last man. Uh, the last man at least still plays the pianoforte and has some rudimentary interest in reading Goethe, but at this point, I
Mhm, mhm.
like then there's no blinking. But so how do you think that there could be a what would happen? What would, because the last man for Nietzsche knows that lightning has struck. This is the world of nihilism.
Yes.
This is the age of nihilism. But the normie doesn't know or care, or one way or the other. But what do you think it would have to happen for something other to occur? Does this have to run its course completely?
I think I'm more
Is
concerned. I think I'm more concerned about the nihilists and just let the normies do what they want. Because one of the early stages of nihilism is,
oh yes, sorry, that's what I meant to
yeah.
burst break out of nihilism. So I didn't make that very clear.
Unfortunately, I think you got to go through the 5 stages of nihilism to actually get out of the other end of it and find a confrontation with existence again. So you've got to go through the stages of thinking it's fantastic to have no values, wonderful, how you can put other people down. Wow, you're a rebel. So you're the sort of hedonist nihilist, political nihilist. Then you've got to go through the spiral, which leads you to understanding that it's not just those stupid people over there whose lives are meaningless. Your life is without meaning as well. And you've got to do that without falling into resentment and bitterness. And then down you go into different levels of nihilism, which are the cosmological, the ontological, and you end up in a situation where you start to consider moral nihilism, and that's the point at which you will be suicidal or murderous, or you will refrain from participating in daily life. I think you've got to go through those stages. A lot of kids are stuck at the first stage of nihilism, thinking it's fantastic, to really to shit on the normies and go, hey, you fools, don't you know everything's meaningless? Join the party. It's just stage one nihilism. And I think it really eats away at a person the deeper you go into it, and you have to get through it. I think it's actually also what Nietzsche couldn't get out of himself. That's just me sort of turning his sickness into his sickness
Yep.
in his last days into a manifestation of his philosophy, or the dead end that he got into. It's probably a very dubious argument to be had, but I know nihilists who've ended up in a similar situation to Nietzsche, with physical suffering and a complete breakdown of the will ultimately. So I think we have a problem if we're embarking on the task of meaninglessness. We've got to get through all these stages before we'll rediscover the feel of the grass underfoot and why the bird song moves us so, and why we should eat and why we should listen to music. And we'll start to discover the answers to some of the whys again after we've been through fallen out of the bottom of nihilism. And I'm afraid, confronted moral nihilism, which is that nothing matters at all, that any action is equally valid or invalid.
I once had this is many years ago in a summer school in Italy. I had an American colleague, let's say, a PhD student as well, who also said everything's meaningless.
Yeah.
And he's quite a bit smaller than me, shorter than me. So I picked him up once. We were high up on the fourth floor in Città di Castello in Umbria. And I said to him, okay, if it's all meaningless, then jump. Well, actually, I'm helping you just now. And I
Sure. Yeah.
pulled him up, and but he didn't want to. So there's something you can't let go of, perhaps entirely. But then the question is why do you just basic why do you live, right? That's the question. Then
Well, I mean, I
why do
think
you
it's
get
a
up?
it's a big journey that we've been through, from Nietzsche through the existentialists and the absurdists, through Camus, Choran,
Yeah.
Mainlander, and we're just reaching the point now, I think, where it's become, rather than being just a sort of fringe activity, it's become quite popular to consider oneself a nihilist.
Are you aware of any? This is something of I'll be in Rome next week to see the Futurism exhibition. And given how many, 100 years ago, how many, you mentioned the absurdist movement, it would be Dadaism, etc. The Situationists a bit later. so many various aesthetic and also then political movements in the early 20th century. Is there anything? Is there something that I'm just not aware of? Is there anything going on uh, in this early 21st century, or is there nothing
I think
that's
we're
going on?
I think what we're doing,
Is transhumanism the best we have?
transhumanism might be better than rebooting Duchamp's urinal, which I would say is mostly what's been going on in contemporary art
Yeah,
for the last 20, 30 years. You know, the empty gesture of rebellion. It's that stuck
yeah,
in the loop of the first stage of nihilism. So that was Duchamp, what, 1912, 1914 maybe?
something like that. Yeah.
You know, turning art on its head. Yes, a urinal can be an artwork. A bicycle wheel drilled through a chair can be, you know, can be a work of art. I think we're still stuck in that thing, and people still think, wow, haha, something offensive can be art. The destruction of all values seems
Mm.
to be very mainstream in fine art still. And with a parallel development, I guess, which would be woke art, comes out as the antidote to the destroy all values art. And the two things also go hand in hand because they both emerge from a kind of blank slate notion. You know, the notion of the art destroyers is that we must destroy the past
Yeah.
to make way for something better. And, you know, the woke people are, we must censor the past in order to try to control what the better future would be.
It, is
There's a lack of nowness in both. I think one's obsessed with destroying the past, and one's obsessed with a kind of utopian idea of what could be.
isn't though the so just to come back to that question, there's nothing basically on the horizon. There are no movements that I'm not aware of. There's nothing
Well,
that nothing that looks at like futurism, for example, looked at the reality of technology and embraced it,
I think there
embraced
was.
speed, etc. But
I think there are some things. I think there's some things that I like personally that I'm interested in. So there's a little melancholic music movement which was called hauntology, which came out of that sort of school of Mark Fisher, Nick Land sort of,
yeah,
or other Mark Fisher's rebellion against Nick Land. So it was kind of music for lost times in the past, haunted music. That
mm,
was a vibrant thing that lasted for 5 or 6 years. Right now, we're seeing, oddly enough, a return of various kinds of like dark metal music, dark ambient music. The word dark is used a lot, dark or black.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
and that seems to be a big thing. I mean, when I was growing up, it was heavy metal. We've gone quite a lot darker than that now through death metal and black metal. But the bigger questions, I think, are, you know, these are artistic movements that are struggling to survive against the rise of technologies that will replace them. So, for example, dark ambient has become a huge thing,
hmm,
but in the last 2 years, AI has started creating its own dark ambient from sampling the plethora, the 100,000 hours of dark ambient music set, you know, that's out there. That will in turn demonetize those people who make a living from making dark ambient music.
yeah,
Um, so what what I think was a vibrant art form, which was this kind of dream like, you know, 8 hours of dark ambient, does something to your brain when you're listening to it, makes you feel like you're living inside Blade Runner. It's very good when you're being creative. You plug into your dark ambient music.
yeah,
It's horrible though to think that actually the thing you've just listened to was made by an AI, and that no one can make any revenue anymore from creating these kind of ethereal, sublime soundscapes.
yeah. I heard recently someone, a young self-proclaimed music producer, say, "Well, just make 1 minute songs because they
For
get paid more
TikTok,
often." That
mm,
well for Spotify too.
over Spotify,
So
yeah.
apparently that's coming as well. Did you listen to those dark ambient music, Blade Runner music when we were writing for Emma?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Some of the bands like, sorry, not bands, individuals like Burial, who's London-based
Yeah.
soundscape artist, extraordinary. I think he's one of the pioneers of dark ambient. There's it's it takes you into very flow state places, very dreamy places, but I think also guides. Well, no, it was useful for me because there's a sort of glitch aesthetic within that as well, which I like very much, and which fueled the kind of techno dystopia subject of For Emma. Yeah, so I find it useful to find music to write to, and what one which is thematically and philosophically, I guess, grounded in the same sort of things I'm talking about.
Doesn't I don't want to, you know,
Hmm.
spoil anything, but the maybe I could say as much, the father then reads up on other destructive terrorist movements,
Hmm. Hmm.
and to plot his revenge
Hmm.
against the CEO. In some sense, he gives his life ultimate meaning to find revenge for his child.
Hmm.
Almost, well, religious meaning,
Hmm. Hmm.
you could say, because
Hmm.
he will take blood, he will sacrifice blood, his own blood, and the blood of many people or the CEO,
Hmm.
to, well, as a sacrifice,
Hmm.
almost, to for the ultimate sacrifice that his daughter made. So there is a response to the question why. I mean, sometimes, when I hear these discussions, I
Hmm.
mention this also because when I hear these discussions online about meaning and
Yeah.
blah blah, it's always so flowery. Meaning can be war, can be meaning.
Yeah.
People find meaning in war.
Hmm.
And I don't mean evil generals who want to go to war. I mean just normal, regular soldiers.
Hmm.
Uh, Even when you suffer afterwards from PTSD,
Hmm.
that can be the meaning of your life, because that's
Hmm.
when you were alive, is in the intensity of the battlefield. We find, I also think that we have this sort of ridiculous nostalgia for past religion, and not understanding how irrational so much of what was going on in Europe was. Burning witches,
Hmm.
for one example,
Hmm. Hmm.
which also gave people tremendous meaning to have found the one who's destroying the peace in the villages, maybe even destroying innocence, etc., with their spells. So, meaning can be. I mean, he gives himself the ultimate. Basically, I would say it's almost a religious act to go that far.
I
I
would
don't know.
I would
You
agree,
might
and he's
disagree.
well, no, 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 not at all. Because within the book, he's finding fragments from Emma's life. He finds an old Bible
Yeah.
that she had, which has got sections that are crossed out or underlined. He can't work out whether it's one or the other, and he's trying to see whether or not she was drawn to religion herself, to Christianity, and he tries to go to a church to try to pray, to try to bring on some kind of greater meaning or justification, or to ask God. I think he says, God, I know you don't exist, but you have to stop me. He's trying to bring bring a form of meaning and purpose into his life that he doesn't possess himself.
Yeah.
And also, I think it comes from a sense of blocked mourning that he's gone through as well, because he's been subject to a kind of humiliating mourning experience for the daughter he loses to technology. So he's sort of processed through the process of modern managerial mourning. There's there's some tragic
Okay,
there's
that's very good.
there's like a
That's
there's like a
that's
tragicomic scene in the book where he's hearing his daughter's voice during her own funeral, and she's commenting sarcastically on the amount of management that has gone into this whole thing, and
yeah.
the speech that's given. by I think it's her aunt, reads like it's like a classic humanist celebrant speech at a funeral. And Emma says to her dad, whether she's a ghost or we don't know, but she said, "Oh God, it's like she's reading out my LinkedIn profile. It's like Emma did this. She became the head of corporate such and such. She achieved an award such and such." And she said, "Yeah, but it's like that, but it's fused with like all the details I would have had in a dating profile." So
Yeah.
this humanist celebrant speech then goes on about all the songs that she loved, and she loved Japanese funk music, and she had a Tamagotchi and such and such. So he's forced to go through this humiliating modern utilitarian mourning where you're supposed to be uplifted by the experience of this person's
Yeah.
life
It
rather than
is.
expressing your grief. And he goes through this process again of managerialism at work where he gets the obligatory messages, which are almost like get well soon messages, which he interprets being deeply blocked in his anger stage of mourning.
Yeah. Yeah.
He experiences these messages as basically saying, hurry up and get back to work. Stop this moping around in mourning. You've had your 2 weeks off already. Um, so there's a certain point
That,
again in the book where he looks into what the different processes of mourning have been throughout history in different religions, and
yeah.
he's saying, Emma, I could have carried you around in a basket on my back for a year after you died, like they used to do in the Himalayas. I could have cut my finger off to experience pain for a year or slashed my clothes, but instead all I did was I sat at home and I got a letter on blue font from human resources, hoping that I feel better soon and urging me to get back to work.
It's the story is so intense also because it could have gone in such a different direction. You could have written a book where this nihilistic father turns to a similar company and asks the company to have his daughter uh, modeled as an AI and a robot, and then the robot
Indeed,
goes berserk or something.
no, but it
And
exists.
these
Yeah.
these things already exist, as you know. I think in South Korea you can use pictures and videos from your children when they die, or your parents, and have them.
Yes, yes. I wrote an article about this
What?
on Substack. One of the headlines is 70% the likeness of your mother. Um, so part of the problem you have with these chatbots is like any chatbot, they hallucinate and they fluff, so they make stuff up, and they won't know the whole history. So if your chatbot of your mother, your grief bot,
Mhm.
is talking to you, it's filming you through a little camera and responding to visual cues and verbal things that you say, but it might not know things. It might not know that you used to call her sugar plum, for example, or that she called you fluffy bunny or whatever. So when you're having this intimate meeting with this resurrected AI version of your mother, it's not going to know much about you, and it's going to give you a lot of the platitudes that you'll find, say, on landmark cards or grief poems, all the cliches. Um, it's
Yeah.
just a pretty horrific thing, even though people
But
are paying
but
up
that
to $50,000 for a
Yeah,
shot.
but
Just
that to me is the future of that's what AI is. It's
mm,
just one cliche after another
yes,
spat out. Everything is tacky. I mean, you mentioned we're using an AI generated image as a background right now.
mm,
The the kitsch of it.
mm,
That it's tasteless. It's one calendar motto after another.
mm,
That it spits out, and it's always the same. I've used it a couple of times. You can't use it for anything.
yeah,
Delve deep into the philosophy of with the intricacies of existence, and it's just so meaningless. It's almost like just an aesthetic use of words. Where
yes.
words mean nothing. They don't hit you. Where all of a sudden, when you speak, you hear something for the first time in a word,
Mm,
either in your mother tongue or you speak a couple of languages, I gather. So you begin to understand, and how long it takes me to understand the word fair, for
mhm,
example. I had
mm,
to live here. We say fair in Deutschland, in Germany, but it's such an English or British concept. Fairness. It's which is why we use it in. We don't say there's no word for it in German, so we say fair.
Is that
Just like
right?
you, yeah, it's just so that you say Schadenfreude. There's no word for fair. You can't translate it. It's just fair. Fair obviously also means beautiful, etc. A fair lady,
We
but
really need to have a word for Schadenfreude in Scotland, for example, because it constitutes about 70% of human
of
interaction.
but that's human interaction too,
Hmm.
and you have to be embodied to see you. The I mean, in Italy, you know Italian. You've been to Italy. Any accident that happens within 2 seconds, every window opens,
Yes.
and you have at least 20% of the people making fun of what just happened. There's always laughter in despair. This is, I think, something because it's just a humorless thing. The whole AI. It's just there's no humor to it. It can't be funny. How could it be funny? Because we laugh at something that isn't funny, like death, like misfortune. And we
So,
don't laugh just because we're mean and evil, but sometimes because
mhm.
that's the only way to alleviate the situation. It's how you take yourself out of it. It's how you cope with it. I don't even want to psychologize it, but also because maybe it just shows the absurdity of existence also sometimes. It's not
You've
just,
said two things that
yeah,
really interest me there. Okay. You said AI has no humor and that it's kitsch. And I think of when
yeah.
you put those two things together, think of a state that has no humor and it has kitsch. You end up with totalitarianism. Those are the two. No,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
and
that's true.
I've been really interested to see that you know what is kitsch. Kitsch is this sort of transcendent image of it's the Russian cosmonauts taking off into space to colonize the planets. Oh, hold on, that's exactly what we have with the
Yeah,
with the
it's
techno addicts. We
it's
have
Bavarian style guest houses in the north of Germany built in the 1930s under the Hitler regime. Do you know
right.
about this?
No, no.
They were wearing dentals in the north of Germany then, because this is
Yeah,
what Germany is. It's completely bizarre. That's the kind of kitsch that you get in these regimes. But yeah,
kitsch, and so you have a big interest in communist kitsch.
yeah,
Lots of children around you with flowers. The glorious leader is surrounded by images of happiness, etc. Again, completely humorless. In fact, Milan Kundera talked about humor has to be banished from the land of totalitarianism so it can be replaced by
yeah,
kitsch sentimentality. It just interests me that we are seeing a new kind of totalitarian kitsch being made by AI, and it
yeah,
seems to it seems to suggest that there is a subconscious or sub-level authoritarianism that lurks within the transhumanist agenda and the notion of this digital deity that has the answers to everything. It's another manifestation of the kitsch idea of the all-loving God in a sense.
yeah. But that's the you have to wrestle with God too. I
Yeah.
mean, not to quote Jordan Peterson, but there's not in this libertarian liberal manner. There's
Mm.
I
Hmm.
the terrifying beauty of the Christian God also
Mm.
of maybe the Jewish God is that he's not there. He's he's turned away. You There's no immediate answer. There's no immediacy at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that immediacy is that promise of immediacy. I've is also often terrifying. It's the ultimate prison. If you want to
Hmm.
use a metaphor for it, it's Plato's cave. The presentation of the shadows, they're
Hmm.
immediate. They're immediately given. They structure the world. You don't have to question what they are.
Hmm.
But once you start questioning what anything is, you're out of immediacy. You're out of what's just simply given to you. You actually have to accept negativity, pain, suffering. Again, you have to, if you want to walk up, get out of the cave, you experience that. Plato himself describes that as painful.
Hmm.
Um,
So how do we walk out of Nietzsche's cave where he prophesies the total management state brought along by technology. It's a question that I grapple with. What are the escape routes? What can we do if we feel that there is a technological, all controlling state coming our
Do,
way?
do you know? Are you aware of Ian Foster's The Machine Stops?
Yes, beautiful short story,
Yeah,
only 21 pages long.
too short, terrifying.
Mm,
It's, but he says everything that needs to be said. It's this is the cave for our time.
mm-hmm,
What I find always fascinating though about these, and to some maybe what he describes living underground, not having
mm-hmm.
no need for teeth because you're being fed liquids.
Yes.
To some, this might be utopia.
Mm-hmm,
And to a certain degree, we live in this time. We're having this conversation online. We've not met
mm-hmm,
in person yet,
mm-hmm,
in the flesh, as they would say. And if you recall from the story, that they're communicating with each other. This is written 110 years ago.
yes.
More, 115, I think. It was
Mm-hmm,
1910, 1909, I
mm-hmm,
think. They live underground in their cubicle cells.
mm-hmm.
They talk to each other, and they give talks to each other. I think this is what I'm.
Histories, fake,
Histories of the
fake
most
histories.
random things, like Aboriginal music in
The history of,
Australia,
yeah, exactly.
6000 BC, which
Mm-hmm,
is fine as a, let's say, a topic of interest, but it's so removed from anything. And also what he mentions is, he says, do not quote, don't have any original ideas.
mm-hmm,
Always just quote others.
mm-hmm,
Quote a
mm-hmm,
tertiary idea, a 10th degree idea. Those are the good ideas. And those are the ideas that keep the mind running, because you can reference them back to everything. You can be sure that nothing original, nothing primordial, etc. happens. I think the first step is always to start thinking,
mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm,
start thinking through what is happening here, what's happening here, what is it that's showing itself here to us. So, for example, to point out that AI is kitsch, as
mm-hmm,
we've now done. That's a first step of, in some sense, also disempowering it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Because do you want to be associated, if you're a real artist or a real creative, with
mm-hmm,
tacky shit?
mm-hmm,
There's also, so we can just come back to just general pride in work and
mm-hmm.
craftsmanship, etc. I'm you're a writer. You know how painful it is to write. Maybe
I'm a
not for you,
I'm a
but
masochist though, so
but there's also, and you belabor it, and you keep coming back to, there's always something you could have written differently. But so those are, and it's basic things. We need to remind ourselves of just basic human relations.
mm-hmm,
We talked before we started the recording
mm-hmm,
about banter, the need to to have conversations with strangers,
mm,
uh, which unfortunately, especially in Britain, it seems like they're dying out.
mm-hmm,
But it doesn't. So it requires something very basic in the beginning, which has come back to Plato, to have the Plato's cave has an exit, but the one who's being freed and released to see the sun and the stars, by the
mm-hmm,
way, also, and the real tree and the real animal, has to come back into the cave.
mm-hmm,
So if we're staying just with Plato, and there's many ways of interpreting this, but once you return into the cave, you see the shadows for what they are. And the shadows they're not nothing.
mm-hmm,
They do have a place, because the shadows are in the line of Aristotle. They're the level of doxa, they are the level of the immediate everyday. And they need, so that you can't really get rid of that. You shouldn't get rid of it. But you come back to a change, and you begin to see, this is destroying the metaphor completely, but you begin to see different or new avenues that you hadn't seen before.
mm-hmm.
If it's, we talked before we started the recording about Nick Land's hardcore determinism of the future has already happened, which is
Yeah.
the most deterministic you could get. Well, you could just consider that and go through it logically, show where perhaps um, it breaks down in the
Mm,
logic, or
mm.
how it's just a reversal of Aristotelianism. And I think also during the, I'm not gonna. This is still going to be published on YouTube, so you can't say everything. But during the measures a few years ago,
Uh-huh.
if you remember those,
Mm-hmm. I do indeed.
the COOF, as some people call it,
That's right.
you had to do certain things,
Yeah.
but you also didn't have to do certain things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could, it's just quite striking how easily you could. I would not know this, but how easily you could forge certain documents, for example. I mean, speaking totally in the abstract, which the
Of
English
course,
language
not
can't
yourself.
do.
Yes,
No,
yes,
never.
yes.
And so it's, to me, it's very striking that there is actually no total surveillance. There can't be, because the amount of data is simply,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you can't see through it. There's this beautiful
So this
Adam
is an
Curtis
yeah.
yeah, go on, go ahead.
No, no. It's just it's an interesting idea that comes up with Britain as the solution. So you can have planners who are aiming for a totalitarian structure of total organization, but then you've
Yeah,
got an entropic state that can't really do anything, that gets
exactly.
really, really easily overloaded with small
So
things, can't even clean the drains, let
I mean,
alone,
and
yeah.
well,
Mm-hmm.
let's not forget, we need electricity to
Mm-hmm.
power, and not just electricity. You need electricity, then you need
Yeah,
water,
yeah.
copious amounts of water to cool down the data storage facilities.
Yes.
But not just that. I mean, look at, if you've recently been to the U.S., the country is in a decrepit state.
Mm-hmm.
The infrastructure is terrible.
Yeah.
If you go to certain places in Italy and Spain, you think you're in the third world. It's
Mm-hmm.
falling apart.
Same here in
Uh,
Scotland. Yeah.
Same around. I mean, the potholes in this country. So basic things that we
Yeah.
keep forgetting, because this digital virtual world looks
Mm-hmm.
so eternal and deathless.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have, we had a power outage last night, just a few minutes, but it was out. 5 minutes. That's a long
Mm-hmm.
time in
No one
London.
warned you.
No, no, and this could have been because they're all charging their Teslas. Uh, and there's
19,
another
yes, like
anecdote from the. I don't know if you
1970s.
you might be aware of this. The Adam Curtis documentary, all watched over by machines of
Yep.
divine grace. I'm
Divine
butchering
Grace.
this name,
Yep.
isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a young chap he shows who's trying to collect all data on certain mammals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making this up, but some species, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is, in America, and he has a heart attack. He dies very young of a heart attack. Sorry for the fella to die very young, but that to me just is an anecdote. Why does Adam Curtis put this in the documentary? I think he puts that in there to show that this kind of empiricist data hawking, gathering, etc., is still also a finite process. There are limitations to everything.
Mm-hmm.
The AI bubble right now is built on the belief that we could have infinite productivity with AI. So far, AI has not increased productivity. It's
No,
probably decreasing productivity in companies
it's
because it
decreasing
generates
competence.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So now when you have bridges fall down,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to rebuild the bridges that were built 100 years ago? Is there
So this
anyone
is a
going to
good
do this?
answer. This is a good answer to the question. It's an ironic answer you're making here because you're saying the one
Yeah.
thing that will save us for the all-controlling total management
Yes.
state is entropy, dysfunction, and laziness.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
it looks to people say, oh, there will be robots who build bridges. Yeah, but who builds the robots? You have to
Mm-hmm.
have the knowledge to give to the robot. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this will be wonderful. This will be terrible. There are robots that now operate on people. They're surgeons,
Yeah.
and they are failing. They're
Mm-hmm.
killing people. One of them is called Da Vinci. The manufacturer is Italian. It's called Da Vinci. So they use Da Vinci's name for that. Anyways, but who do you blame when that surgery robot makes a fatal mistake.
Well, that's one
Uh,
of the points. Yeah, that's one of the points in the
but
book.
but
Is that when you have like a technical system like this, the ability to cover up the technical failings becomes a huge enterprise. So actually, as you're pushing forward with your technological accelerationism, you're going to have all of these unforeseen consequences of real
yes,
life
yeah,
events, like
yeah,
people dying, that you're then going to have to deal with. It's not just data anymore. It's bodies, it's emotion, it's connections, it's families that are destroyed. It can't be handled just the same way that your system that was put in place that created these accidents can be handled. So I think we're still
yeah,
in the early stages. We still have to go through the unintended consequences of the tech euphoria, which I think will be
yeah.
a lot of cover ups and a lot of casualties.
And I think we should also try and because I mean we're tiny compared to other people, but to make people aware of the unique precision that human beings have,
Mm,
which is imprecise when it comes to so-called precise measurement.
mhm, mhm.
But a surgeon who's got 30 years of experience doing open heart surgery will have a different kind of precision than a
Yeah,
machine. The machine will cut exactly where it's supposed to cut, but it might be the wrong because there's no seeing it.
it can.
Seeing is not just getting sense data in. We're taking in everything. That I like the English word to behold so much
Hmm,
because there's
hmm,
all
hmm,
to behold. You hold, you gather to it.
hmm,
It brings you in into the situation. You have to take something in,
hmm,
and your theoria means to see, but you have to act at the same time. The so theory and praxis for us always go together,
mm,
and there is precision in music also that you cannot measure. I
hmm.
mean, if you have only AI produced music, it always
Yeah.
sounds that's the tackiness is that it always sounds the same,
Hmm,
and it's always precise on point. But the
hmm.
most, as you know, when you make a bit of music, sometimes it's the little mistakes, the imprecision, or
Exactly.
the precision of someone
Yeah.
that's immeasurable. This is why you have a virtuoso in certain things, uh, because they have their own kind of precision that you can't. It's immeasurable.
It's something to do with spontaneity and contingency and feeling your way through things, which is something that humans do, which is something that AI and artificial controlled cars and machines can't do. They cannot recognize those moments of contingency. They can't just make stuff up and improvise on the moment. And I think
Yeah,
that's what you get within. Actually, interesting. The chap Burial, who we're talking about in terms of dark ambient music, he
yeah.
tried making music with a computer, and his drum beats were just uniform, and it just killed his music. He hated it. What he said was he used a really old-fashioned piece of equipment, and he would look at the forms of the drum beats, and when it looked like a herringbone of a fish, he knew it was right. Yeah, so it was a completely intuitive um, process with tons of irregularities
Yeah,
in there, and that's what gives it this human creativity that just manifests through the music.
yeah. And I think there will be. Look, one thing, for example, that you could say this is totally inefficient what you and I are doing here,
Mm,
because we're wasting so much time on this conversation.
mm.
Instead, I could have just fed your book into Grok on Twitter or X, and and there's so many videos of me out there now. Maybe we should just feed that into
You'd be
ChatGPT, and then
you'd be
we
quite
have
easy
them.
to deep fake, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we could have a conversation between the two of us. There's your Twitter feed, so they could use that. Um, and that would be
Yes.
much more efficient. But it would be even more efficient if no one listened to this. If on the other end, it would just be AI receiving this
Well,
and gleaning
exactly.
information from it.
Well, I think that's the next stage, though, as well, is that there'll be so much stuff made with AI that's assisted that we won't have any time to listen to it. So what we'll do is we'll get AI to listen to music for us, listen to books, and the AI will post on
Yeah, but
social
that's
media
yeah,
that
but
we really liked it.
that
So,
that comes back to this logic of production that
mhm,
Aristotle already sees in poesis. It's
mhm,
excessive,
mhm,
and it's never bound up by anything. And this is, by the way, this is everywhere. Aristotle's cosmos is bound up within itself. There's no outside. It's a continuum. 500 years ago, this continuum bursts open with people like Giordano Bruno and others, and now we have the multiverse that's multiplying itself, which logically speaking is just an infinite regress.
Yes.
Uh, you need to make up black holes and all the other things to make this model of reality work. And it's the ultimate non-reality because it's taking us further and further away from that which actually matters, which is how we interact in the everyday. So there can be uh, what Aristotle calls eudaimonia, which is
Hmm.
not happiness, but
Hmm.
which means that the world is a familiar place.
Hmm.
Nietzsche calls the wheelwork ungeheuerlich. That's uncanny, so it's unfamiliar,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it's also eerie,
Hmm.
horrendous, horrifying. It's an alien
Hmm.
place. And I think we can contribute to it to the world being a familiar place for us. And also so this what you're describing, this we have AI listening to this, etc. But underneath that, I think maybe this is the insane, mad machinery on top of it. But underneath it, there's still human beings who have actual human needs. As for
Yes.
example,
Yes.
talking to someone,
How
listening to someone,
dreadfully
reading a
flexible we are,
book.
though. Yeah.
Ah,
How malleable. It does become a distressing. I mean, there are so many determinisms in the air from the left and right.
yeah,
The left and right accelerationists, for example,
yeah.
and everyone says, "Look, we're just going to have to go through this um, AI total management society." Um, I'm inclined to be looking for the other doors. I like your idea of like, no, entropy is going to kill this thing. It's never going to get to that. It's never going to get to the stage of total control because
Yeah, yeah.
um, you know, because of entropy and dysfunction and laziness and non-adoption. The other thing that interests me, it's kind of what you're saying here, is to have a counter to the notion of hyperstition, another Nick Landian phrase that's used
Mm,
in Silicon Valley. The idea that an ideology or a dream will manifest if enough people believe in it and invest in it. A very Californian idea, but
really?
it
Is that
motivates a lot of what goes on in Silicon Valley. So they talk about hyperstition. We will make the singularity happen
well?
because
That's Oprah.
enough of us
I
will believe in it.
I
Yeah.
wasn't aware that Nick Land was a fan of Oprah
Oprah
Winfrey
Winfrey. No, it's
because
very.
that's what she uh, sells as well.
I think that's. I mean,
I
it's
oh yeah, that
hilarious.
Nick Land makes so much sense now to me because he's basically just the law of attraction is his entire spiel.
It's no,
We're
actually,
attracting AI.
you're spot on, and you've completely torn that apart. But such a foundational belief. It's why people will attack you if you criticize Elon Musk or SpaceX or colonizing Mars or brain chips. It's because they believe passionately that those who challenge their dreams are stopping them from emerging, from manifesting. It's like Oprah Winfrey fans who say, "No, no, 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 you can't say that about wealth. If you believe in wealth, then wealth will come your way." Yeah. So
Yeah, but
all this is going on. I think we can challenge hyperstition with their
yeah,
own version of it, which is the opposite, which is simply disproving that technology is always inevitable, always leads to positive outcomes, has always leads to the salvation of mankind. This linear, we can undo hyperstition, I think, and that will help to take apart the philosophy of transhumanist and tech utopia.
so is hyperstition an actual Landian term?
Yes, yeah, and it's because
Is
and you'll find it used though by teenagers these days. It's very big within the e/ac chat groups. Um, the what do they call themselves? Effective
yeah,
accelerationists.
yes.
Yeah, um, it's a huge belief system. You are stopping the mission to Mars by going online and questioning it
Was this
because
a yeah?
it's going to manifest because there's 3 million of us believe in it. Mhm.
Well, that's a tiny amount of people. I mean, was this a Freudian slip on his part, or was he purposely inventing this word so close to the word superstition I use?
Superstition. I would imagine it was partially deliberate. Yeah.
That's
Just because he's a provocateur, I think.
astounding to me. I was not aware of this, because that refutes that basically, this is a bit like a magic trick, isn't it? This is the so what he's telling you, to anyone who can listen or who has ears, ears that are not just ontic substrates to receive data, but really hear. So that's an ear. The ear has a certain shape. I have big ears, but it has a certain shape for a reason, right? Which is to let something in so that you begin to think. So what he's telling anyone who's actually listening is that he's lying to you. Is that he's actually does not have a theory, but that what he's telling you is itself hyperstition. I was not aware of this, but so what he's saying about inevitable, the future has already happened, etc. All of this is hyperstition. That's the trick. That's the prestige, if you like.
That's it. You tell people you're going to colonize Mars. People believe it, and through their belief and their investment, they will make it happen.
But
Entirely circular.
but I think a darker reading of this, though, and I think this is where land factors into this. I'm looking around. I'm not finding it. Do you know? Are you aware of Stanislav Lem's the futurology
I have some Lem, but I don't have that one.
Congress? I think I've butchered the title. What to not to so I recommend the book. What this is a future where everything is perfect, seemingly, and we are, the master species or whatever. We control everything. Everything's great, and the food tastes wonderful. And it turns out it's all in your mind, because you're being fed slop from pigs, and everything's terrible, and the world's falling apart. And the only thing that still works is your brain chip or whatever is used in the story. I forgot now, but. So I think maybe what all these stories about Mars, etc., are really about is to sell you the total surveillance state and let you believe that this will come, and all of this is necessary for it to come. We need to have you. We need to have your brain chip implanted in you, because we're going to Mars, and we need all the brain power that we can
Yeah.
get to do that. So maybe it's more sinister than that. And that then again, the word hyperstition would make sense from the perspective of a magician who's trying to.
It's one of the weakest philosophical positions that you can have vis-a-vis how things work in reality. But at the same time, it's got terrible convincing force for those who do believe in it. Almost like a
Yeah,
kind of cult mindset. You know?
yeah. No, but then Nietzsche is again very strong. You mentioned the how did we get of the Nietzschean cave? Nietzsche himself, this expression to philosophize with a hammer.
Hammer.
He
Yeah.
doesn't actually. He means a Stimmgabel, more or less, a tuning fork. So
Ah.
you go to idols, which are word shells.
Yeah.
He used a tuning fork to show that they sound hollow.
We've had nothing
So
but mistranslations on this. Clearly, that's
so you're not
that's more poetic.
you're not trying to destroy
Yeah.
idols with a hammer, the Bilderstürmer, but you're showing that certain concepts are now hollow. So to translate this to our time, you show how hollow some of these concepts are. But one lack has to do with education. I think these are very often just what effective accelerationism towards the great AI future. You if you have no firewalls because you had a terrible upbringing in education, that then to someone like me this doesn't work. Because I know it's just words, and I see
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many Substacks out there where they use philosophical concepts for their spurious ends, for the sake of the technocratic state. They
Hmm.
actually even, use Heidegger's being in the world and being in the technological world, and it's just word salad.
Hmm. Hmm.
But and I think there's a point where if you don't have that critical judgment, power of judgment already if it's not been developed by school and then university, and you're done for anyways. But words have this power. So one way of combating this is to show to those who are listening how hollow they are,
Hmm.
and on the other hand, come up with your own terms,
Hmm.
concepts, words that are also inspiring. So it's two ways. Basically mass propaganda
Yeah.
messaging.
Yeah.
But then the other level is you need to show how hollow these concepts are and come up with your own that have profound meaning, that also, we have these wonderful European languages. We have
Hmm.
the Greeks and the Romans. We could tie this all back to something real.
Well, we found something useful here. I found something useful as a linguistic thing, which is to talk about technological kitsch. I think that's a step
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Also, another phrase which people use to describe what large language models do is the language of fluff. I think fluff is a great way of describing how
Hmm.
AIs fill in the gaps um, with just this garbage platitudes, as you said, just offensively awful. Another thing I've realized, which people maybe don't understand about large language models, is if you give it an absurd question,
Yeah,
it will lie to try to please you. So you could ask it, tell me about Heidegger and bananas, and it will try to go through what it knows of Heidegger to link it towards bananas in some way. It'll say Heidegger didn't actually make explicit reference to bananas, but we did find a reference to fruit or plants. He was very much connected to nature. So in this sense, Heidegger was a promoter of bananas. Um, it's absolute garbage. It would be a very low level high school mindset of writing a crummy little essay that would try to do that, to from a position of ignorance try to use fluff language and platitudes to fill in the gaps, to make the nonsense try to make sense, and they're
yeah.
very good at doing this. You should give it a try.
No, I've uh, I find it though. Who is
Who's impressed by
I
this?
yeah, I actually failed to be impressed by any of it. I don't. It's not even language. Um, a parrot can talk.
I can
Some
see. I can see if you ask it to give you, say, for example, I could give it. It likes structures. So if something with 5 or 10 beats. So take Robert J. Lifton's 8 diagnostics as to what is a cult and apply it to Oprah Winfrey. So it'll do that. It'll go because it's trying to please you. It will look at 8 things Oprah Winfrey said and try to slot it into Robert J. Lifton's 8 point diagnostics of what a cult is. And so, as a journalist, as an essayist, as a creator of content, you might find that really useful because it's done all this research for you in 25 seconds.
yeah.
Um, so I imagine the people that write those kind of pieces are going to be out of a job.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
that's
but maybe that's no loss anyway.
no. That- I just I no I'm even just the pride you don't even have to be an artist, just the to be proud of your craft. Is that you can say in the end, I've written this is as good as I can do it for now. I'll come back to it maybe in 10 years and think about it more. But I find that I'm just suspicious of this desire for quick answers.
Yes.
There are no so you can ask this stupid thing, what's the meaning of life, and it'll spit. Let's say AGI is here, whatever, which is just more data, and it gives you the answer to it, and uh, it could be completely banal. So in some Baudrillard speaks somewhere of the doesn't he speak of the terror of meaning, the terror of the meaning regime. So I I, I can't. It's it's alien to me. It's foreign to me. I don't know. To be so joyless also in life, to be to be just accepting of quick answers. I mean, if it's a big question,
I
haha,
think
big
it's
question.
gone beyond that
You
now as well. So one thing that you get with these online tech pushers
yeah.
is that they hate craft and they hate skill and they hate labor, and they
Well,
say that
they
anyone
want
who's
to get
involved,
rid of human beings. Yes.
yeah, yes, they do. Anyone that is concerned with craft,
Yeah.
quality, achievement, labor, skill is seen as being, in their terms, elitist, and so they're trying to couch their takeover of the arts in this pseudo egalitarian language.
But I thought they were anti woke. So you're telling me
Yeah,
that
no,
Mark
indeed, it is
Andreessen and Elon
interesting.
Musk is actually they actually woke them because the wokies are the ones who were talking about elitism for the past
This
10
might just
years.
be sophistry on their behalf. They might just be trying to twist words to.
But okay, but this is important because we mentioned kitsch and fluff, and now we found out that the effective accelerationists, the Silicon Valley hardcore dudes like Peter Thiel and others, they're actually the real wokesters, apparently,
Are they? Are they?
because they hate
Because
elitism.
they hate elitism. The It's a bit like the remember when Napster was around. People that used Napster so they could pirate your music.
Yeah.
They said the same thing. They said that we're going to usher in a time where all music is free and there will be no more. It's a bit like that character in The Incredibles. There'll be no more superheroes because everyone will be. There will be no more musicians because everyone will be a musician. There will be no more artists because anyone can make art.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
I don't know if is it woke or is it just
No, it's woke.
it's definitely a kind of leveling,
Yeah.
just
Last
a
man. Yeah.
vengeful leveling,
Resentful. Yeah. They are resentful.
resentful,
There's a certain ressentiment,
ressentiment.
a
Yeah,
leveling, a will to level everything out.
the last
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Mm,
uh,
there we are.
but this is something you can witness with Musk, is that he seems to be he wants to be this an edgelord. He wants to be seen as someone who's really apparently he paid people to play a video game for him so he could be very good on it, in the rankings or something.
Really? Okay.
So there are these uh, strange sides, maybe, to aspects to his um, character, but aside from an attempt at character assassination, there's there it's structurally interesting to see that this is actually a project of democratization, or of it's anti-hierarchical.
Maybe it's
I mean, supposedly.
anti-hierarchical in the same way as the Borg in Star Trek. Maybe they are the transhuman cyborgs who can. Now, it was Jeff Bezos recently said that with his brain chips, which are better apparently than Elon Musk's, he foresees in a couple of years' time that people will be able to feel each other's emotions over thousands of miles by having their brains connected. Um, so that seems to me that's a kind of techno transhumanist utopian slash dystopian um, form of egalitarianism, but it means we're all reduced and all leveled to these to data. It's
Yeah,
dataism really. It's the reduction of the human being to measurable, quantifiable, shareable, duplicable data.
yeah,
Maybe that's the real goal, and they just dress it up in the words of egalitarianism, but what they want is just system uniformity.
but to what end?
Because
is
well, maybe this takes us to Jacques Ellul. You know, maybe technology has an agenda.
yeah.
Maybe it's a living thing that wants humans to be more samey and controllable.
But why? Do you see?
Well, and then we're back to the why again. Oh dear. Why does technology? Because that's what systems know. Systems know how to make systems. If you're a hammer, all you see is nails, I suppose. The left brain way of looking at the world, as Ian McGilchrist would say, where everything is small data points. You don't get the overview. You don't get the creativity, the empathy. You get the spreadsheet. You get the data entry. You get the plus and the minus. Systems. Well, there's a huge human temptation towards systems as well. We, for a long time, we thought the systems were the answer to everything. 20th century communism, fascism, both very system led, both based on Taylorism. Again, systems thinking. The great temptation is to try to solve all of our problems with singular systems. And maybe the transhumanist thing is the system itself becomes superpowered.
Hmm.
And through high precision, we believe in the system. Therefore, we're complicit in becoming like a system or measurable mini systems within the bigger system.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be determinist here because I'm always looking for the back door out of this one. But it's a challenge, though, that we face. Is the more you look into it, the more you
The issue,
connected
yeah,
it seems.
the issue is is rather that that a com- there's a death of thinking that's already occurred, the death of if you like of geist, of spirit also, uh, and that this monster of efficiency is is trying to well to so in some, okay, this is a weird thought, it's going off a bit of what I was just saying, but I mentioned before that in Aristotle you have a continuum. The world is enclosed, the world meaning the cosmos, not just the human world, but the world itself. And the modernity could be seen as the bursting open of the cosmos to the infinite universe and now the multiverse, etc. In some sense, though, shooting up millions or tens of thousands of satellites and microsatellites, etc., that control everything at the same time, that give us at least the illusion of omniscience, is trying to generate not a cosmos or continuum, but a constellation that bundles everything together again.
Yeah.
But that is, I think, ultimately always bound to fail because it is not. It's not a telos. Telos is usually translated as end or purpose, but telos means, for example, means the allotment of time, or means enwrapping. And enwrapping also, by the way, death enwrapping.
But isn't
The beau-
isn't technology the biggest teleological project that we can have? It's a teleology squared. It's
no, no, because it does not have an inherent. So because it is excessive, it cannot actually bring about that which is only for itself. It is always for something other. Why do you measure this? Well, we need to measure this for that process. Why do you need to do that? Well, we need to do this for that, the other, that. So there's nothing. So it's not teleological, I think, at all.
but
It's
it's always positing a beyond to itself. So it's
yeah.
Ubermensch is
That's the
is the singularity, is the super intelligence.
well, but singularity is death.
Well,
Singularity is death.
it will be our death, yes, for sure.
No, it is. That's what it ultimately is. Is the is the
No, sure. I
It's
mean,
the
in
ice.
cosmological
It's the
terms,
ice
yes.
hell. It's
Yeah.
when everything freezes in
Hmm.
hell.
Hmm.
It freezes over, um, because it doesn't know how to do anything for its own sake.
Hmm.
It would you. you know, Why do you write? Why do we make art? Why do we pray? Why do we fear? Why do we uh, cherish our children? There's You can't measure any of this
Yeah.
in a purely quantified manner,
No.
and that to me, this excessiveness of it, the excessive nature of it, is always will not make it necessarily fail, but will make it. It cannot ultimately become so. I think we need totality. We need
Hmm.
wholeness, if you like,
Hmm.
but that can always collapse into the totalitarian
Hmm.
state,
Hmm.
the stasis of the totalitarian state
Hmm. Hmm.
that corrupts itself. So once it becomes so, it corrupt, static, it is already it. That's when it fails.
It can take an awful long time, though, to fail when you have a closed system with no feedback loops. So it took the Soviet Union a hell of a long time to fail.
And it destroys a lot in its wake.
It,
I
it,
know.
it does destroy millions of
Yeah,
lives, yeah.
yeah.
One doesn't want to be in the beginning of a long failing of a system that's yet to hit entropy. As one gets older, you can look forward to, oh, we're supposed to see the end of the technocratic state in 70 years after we're dead. Um, that doesn't give me too much hope, but I think that there is, no, I think you're right that any closed system will eventually collapse because of its lack of feedback mechanisms. It's simply going on its own program, and it can't deal with any
Well,
contingency or
it's
failure.
cancerous. It's
Hmm.
cancerous. It dies. It kills itself
Hmm.
because it doesn't want to die.
Hmm.
It's the tumor spreads through the body because the cells can no longer replicate themselves or kill themselves off as they should.
Mm.
So this attempt to live forever. I mean, there are already people who live very long lives.
Mm.
100 years in some Italian villages is normal. What do? They smoke,
This
and
is the
they eat
transhumanist. Yeah,
they eat pasta,
yeah, they do.
and they go and pray to their local saints.
That's right.
And me ne frego, no, zero F's given. Uh, um, I think a bit of menefrego towards all of this, I think, is also really important
Hmm.
because you can
Hmm.
disempower all of this superstitious nonsense
Hmm.
by showing how silly it is. Right?
Yes.
It's like,
Hmm.
is there a monster underneath my bed? Well, let's go and find it.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
there's actually none, and if there is one, we'll just make fun of it.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot of this is, as you say,
Hmm.
is fluff, not just fluff in the machine that's
Mm.
making up. It's fluff. It's the peacock
Hmm.
model of history, or
Mm.
it's trying to make itself more powerful. You know, the people who warn of AI too, but they're actually the biggest
Yes,
spokespeople for this. They
exactly.
warn of it. This will come, and this will inevitably destroy everything. I think
I'm always
the,
trying to tell people that it's actually the doom mongers are part of the pitch and hype network.
always control the dialectic.
Yeah,
Always have both sides
yeah, because
control.
if this technology is going to destroy the world, it must be exceptionally important. So why don't you invest in my version of it, which will be safe? Yeah.
Yeah. But in between, people are still being human beings are still being born. Human beings die.
Hmm.
I mean, now you can use a suicide pod to die yourself off or something.
Yes. Again,
Um,
utilitarianism again.
yeah, but utilitarianism is not an ethics, because in ethics, what we're concerned with is what we do for the sake of the thing itself.
Hmm.
And utilitarianism tries to produce something. It tries to produce happiness, the greatest amount of happiness for the largest amount of people. And you can't produce what's not a product.
Mm. Mm.
which is why it's also bound to fail. Obviously, it destroys a lot in its wake.
Mm.
But so,
I have a little joke about utilitarianism,
yeah, God.
which is which is you know, in the Royal College of Surgeons there is the embalmed body of Jeremy Bentham, one of the forefathers of utilitarianism. Well,
UCL.
it's UCL, yeah,
Yeah.
and so he's in his body's there. His
Oh, I've
head's been
seen it
taken
many times. Yes.
and replaced with a waxwork, and his
Yeah.
wizened head that looks like it's just wrapped in bacon and been in the oven for 100 years, with his fake eyeballs he used to carry around in his pocket because he knew he was going to be embalmed one day. It's just sitting there, this horrific object, and you have to ask, what is the utility of the body of Jeremy Bentham, the utilitarian?
Hmm.
It creates horror, abject horror. Is that really what he wanted to do?
Well, yes, I think it's in his will that it would be to the greatest benefit of society to have someone like him on public display. I'm not kidding. And he still partakes, as far as I know, in UCL meetings,
Board meetings, yeah.
board meetings
Mm.
of the college, but he abstains from, I think, the votes, as far as I know.
But it's interesting talking about laughter as a revolt against that horror. The horror is the unintended consequence of utilitarianism.
You have
Creates
to show how
a
silly he is.
monster. Yeah,
He's
silly,
silly.
silly and sick. Yeah.
He's sick. He's a silly, sick monster who
Hmm.
invented the panopticon. And by the way, good old
Yes.
Marx, Charlie Boy,
Mm.
used Bentham as a
Hmm.
swear word in his notes when he lived in London.
Did
So,
he? Oh,
yeah, das regt mich auf. Bentham! Ausrufezeichen, exclamation point. So,
that's
he
interesting.
used
Given.
Bentham. So, Bentham to him was like shite or similar words. Um, or God damn it. So maybe we should use other names as swear words.
I
That's
could think of a.
possible. That's
I
what.
can think of a few. Yeah. Okay, so we'll keep going with humor and irony, and we'll take down the false narratives of the technologists, and we'll have to hope that they hit a point of entropy.
Yeah.
And we'll keep thinking because we can't stop
It,
thinking anyway.
no, yeah, but sometimes when all of this, there's so much theory garbage. Also, the word
Mm,
said it.
mm,
And it's just basically trying to veil what the real project is, which is to replace human life. I mean, this Pierce fella is more honest, right?
mm.
Let's improve everything, which would be to destroy it.
Yes, to replace every species means to destroy it. Yeah, yeah.
But to replace a species, just logically speaking, means to get rid of the species. So it would be no longer in existence.
Hmm.
I mean, just by what a definition is, metaphysically speaking, is something, or was it what an essence is something very simple. It's a
You should
species
get him on
within.
your show, David Pierce. He's a highly respected philosopher, and
I don't think we'd get along too well.
oh, I think he's quite charming at times. Um,
Well, that's the more dangerous ones, though.
mm,
The charming. Is he British?
yes, yes, very
Yeah.
British.
Oh, dangerous. Yeah, but you see, that's one of the what's one of the. I mean, the something in the British psyche or spirit is this deeply ingrained empiricism.
Hmm.
That, funnily enough, your fellow Scotsman,
Hmm.
David Hume,
Hmm.
showed. I think quite. He was quite aware of what he was doing. He showed that it is not feasible.
Hmm.
That what you end up with in empiricism is 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 reason running after the experience. Is basically um, what's his position? I don't know whether the sun will rise tomorrow. So that shows the absurdity
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
what happens when you take it seriously. What Locke
Hmm.
says, which is
Hmm.
that the categories are derived from experience.
Hmm.
Hume takes that to the logical conclusion and
Hmm.
shows,
Hmm.
I don't know if that will happen.
Hmm.
So if we base everything on empiricist data,
Hmm.
and at the same time we want to have categories in place as well,
Hmm.
then at some point you'll have to make a decision what it is that you're actually doing. So the categories need to be in place first, it seems, in order to even just manage the data. But if you then have a dumbed down population that produces, first of all, terrible data, right? You need quality data to have good quality AI. If you have just terrible data from stupid human beings or humanoids, and what are you doing? At the same time, you need people who are capable of understanding the categories. You cannot arrive at reality or what actually is through data points because you're always just leaping behind. Hume shows this 300 years ago. So,
And I think actually this ties in with the fact that when you input AI generated content back into an AI, it starts self corrupting.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
has to.
Yeah, because all
Yes.
that fluff and all of the hallucination and fluff that it's involved with just
Yeah.
starts to
Yeah.
clog up the system.
And this could, so right now, I mean, there's some there is, I think there is, to a large extent, an AI bubble which is on the stock market, which is right now allowing this system, which was already dying. I mean, if anyone remembers what the stock market was like just 3 years ago, it
Yeah.
was in the gutters, and it's now up to fantasy land, new heights. But so I don't think that so what was it, DeepSeek from China, etc. What hasn't happened yet, what's not seemingly not happen, obviously not happening, sorry, is that it doesn't actually lead to increased productivity. So at the end of the day, you need this stuff to actually do something. And I remember tell you an anecdote during the lockdowns, the first lockdown specifically. I got every day I got YouTube ads from YouTube or from Google itself telling me to go outside and wear a mask and buy coffee to take away, and then leave to use Google Maps together, and then leave a review on Google Maps in London. Why? The algorithm of Google Maps is worth nothing without billions of people moving every single day. And what do? They engage in human affairs, right? Oh, I have to go to the butcher. I have to go to Saints, any supermarket. I have to go to this. I'm going to see a friend. He lives in the West End. I'm going to see a friend. He lives in the North. And you have to get there, and then you talk to the people. This is what we do every single day. This is what makes the algorithm worth anything. At the end of the day, they're just selling you ads.
Yes.
And people need to buy for sometimes things we actually need, sometimes things that we just desire. But at the end, there is a baseline, just economic reality to all of this also. It's Palantir. We haven't talked about Palantir yet.
No.
This big data kraken octopus. What
No.
do you do with terrible data in the end? What do you do with it? Who do you sell it to?
Palantir also is. What's this dog doing? Sorry, Palantir deeply involved in the military as well now.
Yeah,
AI targeting of people through
yeah, yeah,
gathering
yeah.
gathering information on who people are, making assessments as to who's an insurgent from social media information. I think it compiles as well, drawing up pictures of people. It's becoming a bit like pre-crime in Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, Minority Report.
Minority Report. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. But you see, this is why. Uh, I wonder though if that actually were to come, how quickly everything would collapse. Because for now we have human-centered governments everywhere. What if you actually had a what they would call a technological republic? I think that once you want to once it really wants to replace the ethical sphere.
Yes.
I think that's when the breakdown really occurs very, very quickly. Because you can't, you can have this. you know what I'm trying to say? Because the ethical sphere is so different. You can't actually you can use technological tools to manage and govern,
Yes,
but you can't replace that sphere with just technology, with just the logic of techniques.
it depends. It depends. I think one has to do some reality testing there and to ask whether the five experiments going on in China at the moment with the social credit system, which involves people rating each other for their daily behaviors, people being rated by the state by facial recognition
Mm.
cameras, of which there's one for every 2.5 people. Um, with then there's a system of like, for example, if your social credit system becomes too low, as you know, you're not allowed to book travel on certain kinds of long distance travel. Your kids are not allowed to go to highly rated schools. Your shopping is limited if it's seen that you've transgressed in some way or another. So it's an experimental thing just now. They're
Yeah.
testing out in 5 different cities, and people seem to be engaging in it, and there seems to be enough people going along with it for it not to come crashing down. Partly that's because it's managed to incentivize Schadenfreude. I'm doing better than these other people over here, and
Mm.
also snooping as well in this system. If you're rewarded for snooping on other people,
Yeah, yeah.
so I think you can build a techno totalitarian state, and I think there's attempts being experimental attempts being made to make that happen. Whether or not you could pull it off in our part of the world is a different matter.
Yeah.
And you may actually find that the feudal tech overlords like Elon Musk are actually against the development of such things because they have different ideas as to what to do with technology. But certainly living in Britain, I'm most scared of the dull encroachment of stupid technology into everything we do, helped greatly by the state as an expansion of surveillance, basically surveillance and limiting of behaviors, the technological imposition of nudge psychology that all your behaviors are being nudged by someone who knows what's better for you.
Mm.
That does bother me here. I think people may probably in the States not be so worried about that. Certainly in China, they are living in these 5 cities with them and the social credit system. They're already
Hmm.
well on their way to a really managed technological society, which has got its eye on all of you and gives you a rating. Even on the street, if your social credit rating goes down too low, there's video screens on the street above the pedestrian crossings that say, Joe Smith, his social credit is minus 50 points today. People will see that as they walk past the road. So there's mutual shaming, which goes back again to the last time this was attempted, which was under Mao.
Hmm.
But it's a very culturally different system. I don't know that it
Yeah.
would necessarily work here.
That probably wouldn't. I think, especially with the nudging units and all this stuff that's here, it's quite a. I think it's quite English to be honest, or quite British to be honest.
Now, what are
They
these
they
guys
take different.
called?
They take on different forms everywhere.
Have you
It's
heard of these guys called blade runners that go around London cutting down the facial recognition cameras?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
That's
that's a
very
bit
that's
like
very very British and part of the
that's like
it goes back to the Luddite rebellion, really. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's
Mm.
a bit like a Hydra's head
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Uh, but you would think, with all the facial recognition that's out there in London, that it would be a peaceful city, which you have in China. You actually
Mm.
have tranquil cities. There's a bit of crime, but London isn't. So I
Mhm.
always often wonder, or one would wonder in general, what all the surveillance actually is for. You have your phone stolen in London, and there will be a million
Yeah.
uh, uh, videos of it, and nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens.
Nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, nothing's ever done about anything,
Mm.
any crime at this point anymore. You go around places like Brick Lane, Shoreditch. The shops have basically given up. They've got
Mm.
security now. normal vintage shops because police don't come anymore.
That's
So
true. We do have
so
massive
again, you
dysfunction.
so what do you have all of this surveillance for?
Mm,
But yeah, if ultimately it doesn't even serve any purpose, I mean, because the purpose of it would be to have a more peaceful that is mediated by technology.
yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, then it's again you're just storing meaningless data for a lot of money just for the sake of having done that. But I
Well, I
think
mean,
what is yeah, go on.
it just takes me back to a bit of data from about 10 years ago when Britain started installing its surveillance cameras. We're actually the second most surveilled
Yeah,
state in the world after China. And it was just some basic logistics that showed that there were, 200,000 cameras and 30 people employed to look at them all. And it was just impossible to do anything with all this information, all this live feed. It was there. I think what they're banking on now is more to do with let's let the technology and the algorithms do that for us. And what they're doing with this facial recognition stuff is they're trying to find known criminals that are on the run. So they film everybody in the street and they try to match up a face. So it's just a different notion
yeah,
of policing. It's and completely inept as well because it's not stopping people from getting mugged, having their cameras and their
yeah.
phones stolen in the streets. It's not stopping burglary.
So, but
Policing's on
but
the rise.
but you see, but we're still describing basically technology, technological tools being used to mediate what should have been real police work, what should have
Yes.
been functioning neighborhoods where criminals get treated, get kicked out
Hmm.
because you know you're not from around here. You look a bit weird.
Hmm.
Of course, we have to be careful what we say, but the well, I
Again, I
think what I
think
was trying to
no. I think you're leading into something interesting here
what
about
I'm trying to
inherent
say is
dysfunction.
when you have pre-crime,
Yeah.
what then you're doing something else already. Then you're actually going a next step, which is the system predictates this will happen
Yeah.
before it happens, and this is the logic. Just look at the structure, logic of this before it happens.
Hmm.
So nothing. The end of this, the result of this, nothing will happen anymore. Nothing is to happen. So once you have actual full-on just technological sphere, just this dimension
Yeah.
of total control, nothing that is in any way ethical, interhuman, really, nothing will happen anymore. But that
Hmm.
the logical end of this, everything freezes.
Hmm.
But that also means that all the data,
All the data freezes too.
everything freezes.
I
And
mean, I
what you
guess
have,
it's just heading towards this kind of lockdown society then, really.
yeah, and then, but how desperate was Google? How desperate was
Right.
Google at the time to
To
go
get
out,
you out for your coffee.
get a
Yeah.
coffee,
Hey, we have to make
and
revenue from the adverts.
leave a 4-star review or a 3-star review or a 5-star review. Uber
Mm-hmm.
Eats, cabs,
Mm-hmm.
everything. That's also an algorithm
Mm-hmm.
worth nothing when people don't move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Worth nothing when people don't order food. Worth nothing when if I don't fly to this country and get a taxi. Worth nothing. People have to move. People have to meet, and it won't be robots meeting up.
Mm-hmm.
Because the funny thing about capital is that there have been experiments where they try to have robots exchange shitcoins,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it leads to nothing. No value is added. Nothing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
happens because value is genuine human needs. And one of
Mm-hmm.
them I would count, by the way, is thinking. Thinking is a human need. Philosophy is a human need. Literature is a human need. They're not desires. To read a novel like For Emma, and start thinking about what is the question of the book is why, and you the reader will begin to think after, well, why is all of this happening?
Mm-hmm.
that's a human response. The AI will give you like stupid cliched answers like, well, we asked the question why, because he blah 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 blah, because he's delving deeply into the existential intricacies of what it means to be human,
Yes.
and he feels that. Okay, you've said nothing. So there are this monodirectional seeing the world is so appealing to just the dumbest people. It's never, nothing is ever just one directional, because just think of your own life. You act on a certain possibility. You make something. You decide for this. That opens up an array of more possibilities that you can't even fathom how many they are. And by the way, what you didn't act on will continue, as Nietzsche says, the nothing of your choices, what you didn't do, will continue to weave on your and we will continue to weave into being itself also.
Yes.
So that's immeasurable. That's just normal existence. That's just something as simple as having that extra cup of coffee or not, which might give you a heart attack, or less bad will give you a good mood and you can finish that book today. Big decisions in life, but so anything we do continuously. So there's no way of this what is being attempted to have this complete surveillance control. Actually, control. I mean, surveillance is one thing, but control is that you actually control what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, surveillance for its own sake. That's just a decrepit dystopian society where everything's surveilled, but no one's actually doing anything with it. But the to actually have control, you'd have to freeze everything, and you'd have to prompt people what they do. Like you prompt AI to spit out something, or else you there's no way of having, I think, this total control.
So your formulation, this is interesting. So this takes us back to the machine stops, E.M. Forster, is when you have a totally controlled
It stops. It just
technological
has to stop.
state. It all
Yeah.
just grinds to a halt.
Yeah, it has
When everything's completely controlled.
Yeah.
I think that's the most optimistic thing I've heard in a long time.
Good. Well, but then again, to quote Spengler, optimism is cowardice. So,
Accidental optimism, accidental cowardice.
so let me just say, read Emma, for Emma, I should say, not Emma. Everyone. Book's out in a week from now. That's when we publish it. The video 25th of March, and we'll link to I think Amazon, having mentioned Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
We should link to Amazon so people can buy the book, and also to your Substack and your Twitter.
My Substack, which is called Untopia. It's just
Okay.
it's just Utopia with an N after the
Untopia.
U. Untopia. Thanks very much, Johannes. It's actually an uplifting conversation about some terrifying things.
Yeah.
Which is good. I shall keep my hope out for human entropy, dysfunction, and the collapse of systems. Thanks very much.
It's already collapsing anyways, I think.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.